The transport ship shuddered as it docked with the central spire of the Zortak Imperial Palace. Jack Miller adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform, a garment that felt more like a straitjacket than official attire. Outside the viewport, the palace stretched impossibly high, a crystalline structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics and architectural sanity. Final approach protocols initiating, droned the ship's computer in a monotone that did little to calm Jack's nerves. He'd been preparing for this moment for months, the most critical diplomatic mission humanity had ever attempted. The Zortak Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy, and humanity was little more than a footnote in their vast galactic ledger. Jack's reputation preceded him. A former military strategist turned diplomatic troubleshooter, he'd earned a nickname among his colleagues, the diplomatic demolition expert. Where other envoys spoke in careful whispers, Jack preferred direct communication that bordered on confrontational. His superiors both praised and feared his unique approach. As the airlock hissed open, the first wave of alien atmosphere hit him. It was a complex mix of chemical signatures that would have overwhelmed a less prepared human. Jack's specially designed filtration system kicked in, transforming the potentially toxic environment into something breathable. Another human innovation. Adaptation in the face of seemingly impossible challenges. The reception hall defied human comprehension. Gravity seemed to work differently here, with crystalline platforms suspended at impossible angles. Alien diplomats from 100 different species moved with an ethereal grace, their bodies a complex mix of organic and mechanical components. Holographic displays flickered with real-time translations, diplomatic protocols, and complex mathematical equations that seemed to dance in the air. A protocol android approached, its movements precise and unnervingly smooth. Diplomatic envoy Jack Miller of Earth, it announced, each word carefully modulated to remove any hint of emotion. You will proceed to the central reception chamber. The Imperial Court awaits your presentation. Jack knew the stakes. Humanity had been granted a rare audience with the Zortak Emperor, an opportunity that came once in a generation. Their civilization had been expanding rapidly, developing technologies that caught the galactic community's attention. But attention from the Zortak was a double-edged sword. Species that impressed them were sometimes granted limited autonomy. Those that disappointed faced total subjugation. The android's metallic hand gestured toward a massive archway. As Jack walked, he couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in atmosphere. Other diplomatic delegations, some looking barely recognizable as sentient life, watched him with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. Humanity was the newest player in a game that had been running for millennia. His briefing documents were etched into his memory. The Zortak valued 3 primary attributes: technological innovation, cultural resilience, and the capacity for strategic thinking. Humanity had been slowly proving its worth, but this meeting would be the true test. Jack carried with him proposals for technological exchange, cultural dialogue, and potential collaborative research projects. The inner chamber opened, revealing a space that defied human architectural understanding. Gravity seemed to flow like water, with platforms rotating and shifting in a mesmerizing dance. At the far end, raised on a platform that pulsed with energy, sat the Zortak Emperor, a being of such complexity that human eyes could barely comprehend its full form. Jack's training kicked in. Years of diplomatic preparation, psychological conditioning, and cultural study compressed into this single moment. He knew the Zortak respected directness, but also appreciated the nuanced approach of a true strategist. As he approached the Imperial platform, Jack Miller felt the weight of humanity's hopes resting on his shoulders. This was more than a diplomatic mission. This was humanity's chance to prove its worth in a galaxy that had long viewed them as irrelevant. Little did anyone know that before this day was over, the entire galactic order would be fundamentally changed. Emperor Xalcor's form was a nightmare of biological engineering. Tendrils of iridescent membrane pulsed with complex bioluminescent patterns, each movement a language unto itself. Compound eyes, thousands of them, shifted and realigned, creating intricate visual displays that would drive a human mind to madness if observed too long. Jack stood at the prescribed distance, his human body seemingly fragile and insignificant compared to the Imperial presence. The translation device at his throat worked overtime, converting the Emperor's complex communication into something resembling human language. Humanity, Zalcor began, each word dripping with millennia of superiority, represents a curious anomaly in our galactic records. Your species has shown marginal potential, yet you remain fundamentally limited. The Emperor's tendrils manipulated holographic displays that materialized around Jack. They showed humanity's technological achievements, each one dissected, critiqued, and ultimately dismissed. Faster-than-light communication systems were described as primitive quantum manipulations. Medical breakthroughs were reduced to rudimentary biological interventions. Jack's hands clenched involuntarily. He prepared for this. Diplomatic training emphasized emotional control, the ability to absorb criticism without reaction. But something was different here. This wasn't diplomatic discourse. This was systematic dismantling. Your genetic diversity, Zalcor continued, suggests a species of remarkable adaptability. Yet your technological progress remains laughably linear. We have observed your development for precisely 247 standard galactic cycles. Your achievements are unremarkable. Holographic images flickered, human cities compared to sprawling alien metropolises, human spacecraft compared to massive Imperial cruisers. Each comparison was a surgical strike designed to demolish human pride. Jack remembered his briefing. The Zortak believed in psychological warfare as much as physical conflict. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was an attempt to break human spirit before any real negotiations could begin. The Emperor's communication shifted, becoming more granular. Your species has potential for servitude. We could integrate your adaptable genetic structure into our collective infrastructure. Humans could become efficient biological components in our grand design. Something inside Jack snapped. Years of human history flashed through his mind. Moments of defiance against impossible odds. The American Revolution. The Civil Rights Movement. The first lunar landing. Generations of humans who refused to be defined by limitations imposed by others. With all due respect, Jack's voice was calm, almost conversational. You fundamentally misunderstand humanity. Zalcor's tendrils paused mid-motion. The thousands of compound eyes focused with predatory intensity. Jack took a step forward. The chamber's gravity seemed to shift, responding to the growing tension. We are not a species that can be categorized, controlled, or dismissed, he continued. Our strength isn't in our technology. It's in our spirit. Our capacity to look at impossible challenges and create solutions that defy expectation. The Emperor's response was a complex series of bioluminescent pulses that the translation device struggled to interpret. But the meaning was clear: dismissal, contempt. Jack felt a heat rising from somewhere deep inside, a combination of anger, frustration, and something more primal. A representation of every human who had ever been told it can't be done. In that moment, diplomacy died. His hand moved faster than the sophisticated alien tracking systems could register. A sharp, crisp sound echoed through the chamber. The sound of an open palm connecting with the Emperor's complex exoskeleton. The slap was more than a physical action. It was a statement, a declaration of human defiance that would resonate across the galaxy. Time seemed to stop. Thousands of compound eyes blinked in perfect, synchronized confusion. Diplomatic androids froze mid-motion. The complex holographic displays flickered and died. Jack Miller had just done the unthinkable. He had slapped the most powerful being in the known galaxy. And in that single moment, everything changed. The silence was absolute. Jack felt the grip of alien guards, appendages that were part organic, part mechanical, crushing into his shoulders. Their strength was beyond human comprehension, each joint capable of exerting pressure that would shatter human bones in milliseconds. Yet he stood perfectly still, his eyes locked on Emperor Zalcor. The Imperial Chamber transformed. What moments ago had been a pristine diplomatic space now felt like a pressure cooker of alien emotion. Diplomatic representatives from 100 different species stood frozen, their various sensory organs processing the unprecedented moment. Emperor Xalcor remained motionless. The thousands of compound eyes that had been constantly shifting now became a solid, unblinking mass. Bioluminescent patterns across the Emperor's exoskeleton pulsed in sequences no translator could interpret. "Containment protocols initiated," announced a mechanical voice. Energy fields materialized around Jack, creating a shimmering cage of intersecting light and force. Standard procedure for containing potentially dangerous entities, a protocol developed over millennia of galactic conflict. Jack knew the statistics. Hundreds of species had been summarily executed for far less offensive actions. The Zortak Empire was not known for mercy. Their diplomatic solutions typically involved complete cultural erasure or total species elimination. A senior diplomatic android approached, its movements precise and calculated. "Jack Miller of Earth," it intoned, "you are charged with direct physical assault on the Imperial Sovereign. Preliminary classification, maximum threat level." The guards began to move, their intention clear. Jack would be transported to a high-security containment facility, if he was lucky. More likely, he would be dismantled for biological study, or simply eliminated as a potential threat. But something was wrong. The Emperor had not moved. Not a single tendril, not a single compound eye. The entire Imperial Court watched in collective paralysis. Alien physiology worked differently from human biology. What appeared to be stillness was actually a complex process of internal communication. Neural networks that spanned entire planetary systems were processing this unprecedented event. Jack caught glimpses of other diplomatic delegations. Some looked horrified. Others appeared almost intrigued. A representative from the Krelvax cluster, a species known for their analytical approach, was running complex mathematical models, their multiple brains working in parallel to understand the psychological implications of the slap. "Threat assessment incomplete," the diplomatic android announced, its voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. Human behavioral models do not predict current scenario. Jack allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its unpredictability. The energy fields around him began to pulse with increasing complexity. Scanning systems were attempting to comprehend the human before them, not just as a physical entity, but as a psychological phenomenon. Minutes passed. What would have been an instant execution in previous galactic conflicts had transformed into something else entirely. The Zortak were known for their methodical approach to potential threats. They would analyze. They would understand. And in that moment of analysis, something remarkable was happening. The Imperial Court was being forced to reconsider everything they knew about humanity. A senior xenopsychologist, a being composed of interconnected neural networks that would make human brains look like simple calculators, stepped forward. Its communication was a complex dance of light and chemical signals. Unprecedented, it signaled. The action defies all known diplomatic protocols. Psychological assessment indicates complexity. Jack knew he was more than just a prisoner now. He had become a subject of intense galactic study. The guards' grip remained firm, but their pressure had changed. No longer was it pure restraint. Now it felt almost curious. Emperor Xalcor finally moved. A single tendril extended, moving with a slowness that suggested profound contemplation. It approached Jack, not as a weapon, but as an instrument of investigation. The entire galaxy held its breath. The first transmission burst from the Imperial Palace faster than light itself. 100 million communication nodes across the galaxy received the initial data packet, a recording of a human diplomat slapping the most powerful being in known space. On the mining colonies of the Proxima cluster, workers paused their gravitational excavation. Holographic displays flickered with a now infamous moment, each replay accompanied by gasps and stunned silence. Miners from a dozen conquered species watched with a mixture of horror and something else, A spark of hope. Zara Khaleth, a journalist from the Independent Media Consortium, recognized the potential immediately. Her multi-spectrum broadcast network began dissecting the incident from every possible angle. Xenopsychologists, diplomatic experts, and cultural analysts were assembled with lightning speed. "This is more than an incident," Zara announced to her global audience. "This is a fundamental disruption of galactic power dynamics." The videos spread through quantum communication networks, each transmission creating exponential copies. Translation algorithms worked overtime, converting the moment into thousands of linguistic and sensory formats. On some worlds, the slap was viewed as an act of violence. On others, it became a symbol of resistance. Conquered species watched with particular intensity. The Brelnaks, who had been subjugated for 7 generations, found new language in this moment. Underground communication networks began referencing the human slap as a form of cultural resistance. Galactic news networks struggled to maintain their typical detached reporting style. The incident defied standard narrative structures. How does one report an action that simultaneously represents diplomatic suicide and unprecedented courage? On Earth, communication centers were overwhelmed. Diplomatic channels went into overdrive. Government officials who had spent years cultivating careful relationships with the Zortak found themselves completely unprepared. "We're initiating full communication blackout," announced Caroline Roberts, head of interstellar diplomatic relations. Her press conference became an instant global event. "We are gathering information and will provide updates as they become available." But information was already everywhere. Quantum data networks transformed the incident into a multi-dimensional experience. On some worlds, viewers could experience the moment from multiple perspectives, feeling the emotional resonance of the slap through advanced empathy interfaces. The Zortak's typical information suppression systems failed spectacularly. Every attempt to control the narrative only amplified its spread. Their sophisticated communication blockades, designed to manage interstellar messaging, became conduits for the very story they wanted to suppress. Holographic street displays in 1,000 cities began showing the moment on loop. The slap became a meme, a cultural touchstone that transcended species and linguistic barriers. Psychological analysis indicates unprecedented communication vector, reported the Galactic Communication Regulatory Board. Their official statement was a masterpiece of bureaucratic confusion. Subject Jack Miller has generated communication patterns that defy standard predictive models. On the research stations orbiting distant stars, xenobiologists and cultural anthropologists began intense study. The human capacity for such a direct, seemingly suicidal action became a subject of intense scientific investigation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, leading a cross-species research team, saw something deeper. "This isn't just about the physical action," she explained during a live broadcast. "This is about psychological warfare on a galactic scale. The human has transformed a moment of potential destruction into a communication event." The economic markets responded with equal chaos. Interstellar trading algorithms went into overdrive, attempting to predict the geopolitical implications of the incident. Speculation ran wild. Would this lead to human elevation or complete destruction? Conspiracy theories emerged almost instantly. Some claimed the slap was a carefully orchestrated diplomatic strategy. Others believed it was a spontaneous act of human rebellion that would reshape galactic politics. On the mining colonies in academic research centers within conquered civilizations, people began to see humanity differently. No longer were humans just another species to be categorized and controlled. They had become something else. A wild card. An unpredictable force. As the transmission continued to spread, one thing became clear. Nothing would be the same again. The High Council chamber of the Zortak Empire defied conventional architectural understanding. Gravity flowed like liquid, platforms shifted in impossible geometries, and the very air seemed charged with millennia of accumulated political tension. 17 primary representatives assembled, each one a living repository of galactic political knowledge. They were not merely politicians. They were living networks, biological computers whose thought processes spanned centuries of collective experience. Counselor Vexnar, the eldest of the group, initiated the emergency session. His body was a complex matrix of neural networks, biological computing systems that could process information at speeds that would overwhelm human comprehension. The human incident requires comprehensive analysis, Vexnar announced, his communication a complex dance of bioluminescent signals and chemical transmissions. Holographic displays materialized, showing Jack Miller from 100 different angles. Each replay of the slap was dissected microscopically. Psychological profiles, cultural assessments, and probability matrices populated the air around them. A junior counselor, a being whose entire existence was dedicated to predictive modeling, spoke first. Probability matrices indicate a 0.03% chance of this action being spontaneous. Statistical analysis suggests deliberate psychological intervention. Vexnar's response was immediate. Incorrect. Our models failed to comprehend human unpredictability. The chamber fell silent. Such a direct contradiction from the eldest counselor was unprecedented. Xenopsychological data streamed in from across the galaxy. Research stations, academic networks, and diplomatic observation posts had been collecting every available piece of information about the incident. Humanity was being analyzed with an intensity never before applied to a potentially subjugated species. Historical context is critical, announced Dr. Krulmix, a multi-bodied researcher whose several brains worked in parallel. Humans demonstrate a consistent pattern of defiance against systemic oppression. Their historical records show repeated instances of challenging seemingly insurmountable power structures. Holographic displays began showing human historical moments: the American Revolution, the Civil Rights Movement, technological innovations born from collective resistance. Each image was a testament to human unpredictability. The Council's communication networks began to shift. What had initially been a unified response was now developing fracture lines. Some members saw the incident as a potential threat. Others saw an opportunity for unprecedented study. We cannot categorize humans using existing models, Vexnar continued. They represent a fundamental disruption to our understanding of species development. A diplomatic algorithm tried to process the information, its quantum circuits working overtime. Traditional galactic diplomacy relied on predictability. Humans had just demonstrated the exact opposite. Classified research files began to surface. Previous interactions with human delegations showed a pattern of unexpected behavior. Diplomatic missions that defied standard communication protocols. Technological innovations that emerged from seemingly chaotic processes. The mining colony reports became particularly interesting. Human workers had consistently demonstrated adaptation capabilities that exceeded all predictive models. They could transform hostile environments, create solutions under impossible constraints. The slap, one counselor noted, is not an isolated incident. It is a communication method we have failed to understand. Political strategists began running complex simulations. Each model suggested multiple potential outcomes, with human involvement creating exponential variables that destabilized traditional predictive approaches. Dr. Krulmix's research team had been analyzing human psychological profiles for decades. Their findings now took on new significance. Humans did not just adapt. They transformed entire systems through their capacity for individual action. The Council's debate intensified. Some advocated for immediate punitive action. Others saw the potential for a more nuanced approach. The human had not just challenged the Emperor. He had challenged the entire concept of galactic hierarchy. We are witnessing the emergence of a new variable in galactic politics, Vexnar finally concluded. Humans cannot be controlled through traditional diplomatic mechanisms. The holographic displays continued to show Jack Miller, not as a prisoner, not as a threat, but as a symbol of something entirely new. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the catalyst. The trial chamber defied human architectural understanding. Gravity flowed like liquid, with platforms suspended at impossible angles. Jack Miller stood at the center of a multi-dimensional space that served as both courtroom and scientific observation chamber. He was no longer just a defendant. He had become a living experiment. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead human representative, approached the central platform. Her diplomatic credentials were impeccable, but nothing in her extensive training had prepared her for this moment. Jack stood calm, almost casual, as if he were attending a routine meeting, rather than facing potential species-wide consequences. The subject will be subjected to comprehensive psychological and cultural analysis, announced the primary adjudicator, a being composed of interconnected neural networks that would make human brains seem like primitive calculators. Holographic displays materialized, showing every moment of Jack's life. Childhood memories, academic records, psychological evaluations. Nothing was sacred. The Zortak believed in total transparency during their judicial proceedings. Jack's childhood in New Mexico played out in vivid detail. His father, a border patrol agent; his mother, a high school science teacher. Moments of defiance emerge. A school science project that challenged local educational standards, a college protest that changed campus policy, a military strategy that went against conventional wisdom during his brief naval intelligence career. Each moment was dissected by a panel of synopsychologists, cultural analysts, and diplomatic experts from 100 different species. Observe the pattern of individual action, noted Dr. Kleth, a multi-limbed researcher whose body was a complex matrix of sensory organs. The human demonstrates a consistent capacity for challenging established systems through direct intervention. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Conquered species watched with a mixture of fear and hope. Independent worlds analyzed every moment. The communication networks were flooded with real-time translations, cultural interpretations, and psychological assessments. Dr. Rodriguez presented humanity's case. Our client's action represents a fundamental communication method, she explained. What appears to be a violent gesture is actually a complex psychological intervention. Holographic displays began showing human historical moments. The Boston Tea Party, the Civil Rights Movement, technological innovations born from individual defiance. Each image was a testament to human unpredictability. The judicial panel consisted of representatives from species that had existed for millions of years. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, yet humanity presented something entirely new. The human demonstrates a psychological flexibility that defies our existing models, announced the primary adjudicator. Its communication was a complex dance of light and chemical signals. Jack remained silent, but his silence was not submission. It was a form of communication all its own. Witnesses were called from multiple human domains. Military strategists explained the concept of asymmetrical warfare. Psychologists discussed human adaptability. Diplomats outlined the cultural significance of individual action. Humans do not simply adapt to systems, explained Dr. Rodriguez. We transform them. The trial became more than a legal proceeding. It transformed into a comprehensive examination of human potential. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, revealed layers of complexity that the galactic community had never considered. Conquered species began to see humanity differently. No longer were humans just another potential subject race. They had become something else, a wild card, an unpredictable force of cultural and psychological transformation. Jack's personal history became a roadmap of human potential. His ability to challenge systems, to find solutions outside established parameters, was put on full display. The subject's action, one researcher noted, represents a form of communication more complex than direct verbal or physical interaction. It is a psychological intervention designed to challenge fundamental power structures. As the trial continued, something remarkable happened. The judicial proceedings were no longer about determining guilt or innocence. They had become a comprehensive study of human nature. The galaxy watched, and humanity waited. The deliberation chamber pulsed with energy beyond human comprehension. Quantum communication networks hummed with anticipation as the galactic community waited for the verdict that would reshape interstellar diplomacy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood beside Jack Miller, her posture a careful balance of professional composure and underlying defiance. She understood that this was more than a trial. This was a referendum on human potential. The human capacity for direct intervention challenges our entire understanding of diplomatic protocol, announced Dr. Kleth, the lead synopsychological researcher. His multifaceted sensory organs shifted in complex patterns that suggested deep contemplation. Holographic displays reconstructed Jack's entire life trajectory. Every moment of individual action, every instance of challenging established systems, became a piece of a larger puzzle. His military background, his diplomatic training, his seemingly spontaneous moments of resistance, all were now viewed through a lens of collective potential. The Zortak High Council had transformed from judicial body to something more nuanced. They were no longer simply judging an individual. They were reassessing an entire species. Jack remained calm. His silence was not submission, but a form of communication more powerful than words. Each moment of stillness was a challenge to the complex alien systems surrounding him. Diplomatic archives were pulled from centuries of galactic records. Comparative studies showed how different species responded to systemic oppression. Humans stood out as an anomaly, a species that consistently transformed challenges into opportunities for growth. Observe the pattern, Dr. Kleth continued. Humans do not simply resist. They reimagine entire systems of interaction. The trial chamber became a living museum of human potential. Holographic displays showed moments of human innovation. The first moon landing, medical breakthroughs, technological innovations born from seemingly impossible constraints. Dr. Rodriguez presented her final argument. Our client's action represents a fundamental communication method, she explained. The slap was not violence. It was a linguistic intervention designed to challenge fundamental power structures. The alien researchers leaned forward, a collective motion that suggested profound interest. Psychological profiles from human history were analyzed. Each moment of individual action became a data point in a larger narrative of species potential. Military strategists who developed unconventional tactics, scientists who challenged established theories, political leaders who transformed entire social systems. Jack's personal history became a roadmap of human adaptability. His childhood in New Mexico, his military service, his diplomatic training, each experience was a testament to human complexity. The human demonstrates a psychological flexibility that defies our existing models, announced the primary adjudicator. Its communication was a complex dance of bioluminescent signals and chemical transmissions. Conquered species watched the proceedings with a mixture of hope and fascination. For the first time, they saw a potential method of challenging the established galactic hierarchy. The deliberation continued for what seemed like centuries, though in reality it was merely hours. The alien researchers were conducting a comprehensive revaluation of human potential. We are witnessing the emergence of a new variable in galactic politics, Dr. Kleth finally concluded. Humans cannot be understood through traditional diplomatic or psychological frameworks. Jack's single action had transformed from a potential diplomatic incident into a comprehensive analysis of human nature. The slap was no longer just a physical moment. It had become a communication method that challenged fundamental galactic understanding. The chamber fell silent. The quantum communication networks held their collective breath. Something fundamental was about to change. The verdict arrived not with a thunderous declaration, but with a subtle shift in galactic understanding. Jack Miller was neither punished nor celebrated. Instead, he became something entirely unprecedented, a living diplomatic bridge between humanity and the broader galactic community. The Zortak High Council's decision defied every known diplomatic protocol. Rather than elimination or subjugation, humanity was granted a unique status, not as a conquered species, not as a subordinate civilization, but as a potential equal. Humanity demonstrates a communication method beyond our previous comprehension, announced the primary adjudicator. Its communication was a complex symphony of bioluminescent signals and quantum-encoded messages. News spread across thousands of star systems. Conquered species watched with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Jack's single moment of defiance had transformed the fundamental understanding of interstellar relations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood beside Jack during the final proceedings. Her diplomatic career had prepared her for countless scenarios, but nothing could have anticipated this moment. The human delegation had become more than representatives. They were now living symbols of a new approach to galactic interaction. The diplomatic protocols that emerged were revolutionary. Humanity would not be integrated, would not be controlled, would be allowed to develop independently, with direct communication channels to the galactic community. Jack's personal history became a case study. His moments of individual action, his capacity for challenging established systems, were now viewed as potential strengths rather than threats. The military strategists, the diplomatic court, the researchers, all saw something different in humanity's potential. "We are not seeking conquest," Jack explained during the final session. "We are seeking understanding." His words became a turning point. The Zortak High Council realized that humanity represented something more than a potential threat. They were a wild card, an unpredictable force of innovation and adaptation. The new diplomatic framework was unlike anything in galactic history. Humanity would maintain complete autonomy. No mandatory technology transfers, no forced cultural integration. A true partnership based on mutual respect and potential collaboration. Researchers from 100 different species began intensive studies. How could a species so seemingly fragile generate such a profound diplomatic intervention? Jack's single action had become a comprehensive analysis of human potential. Communication networks buzzed with analysis. Quantum data streams carried countless interpretations. What had initially been seen as a potentially destructive moment was now viewed as a sophisticated communication method. Back on Earth, the response was equally complex. Government officials, military strategists, and diplomatic experts worked to understand the full implications of this new galactic status. "We are not conquering," announced President Caroline Roberts in a global broadcast. "We are engaging." The mining colonies, the research stations, the diplomatic outposts, all began to see humanity differently. No longer were humans a potential subject race. They had become something else entirely. A species capable of transforming systems through individual action. Jack Miller became more than a person. He was a symbol of human potential. The living demonstration that true strength is not about overwhelming force, but about the capacity to challenge and reimagine existing structures. The Zortak High Council's final communication was a masterpiece of diplomatic complexity. They acknowledged humanity's unique approach to interaction. They recognized the potential for a fundamentally new type of galactic relationship. Humans do not simply adapt, one researcher noted. They transform. As the diplomatic protocols were finalized, something remarkable happened. Conquered species began to see a potential path forward. If humanity could challenge the most powerful empire in the galaxy through a single action, what might be possible for others? Jack looked out at the assembled representatives. Aliens from 100 different worlds, civilizations that had existed for millennia. And he understood something profound. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again.